a week ago, I was with the president of the company, Tyler Cassidy, and we had just laid to rest Ray Ray out by the lake. We had a beautiful evening service, a private memorial service for the family. And I was sitting there looking, it was at dusk, and I was looking at the lake with Tyler, and he said, Michael, I'd like to ask you a favor. And I'm like, sure, anything. He's like, I'd like you, I have business up north in San Francisco, and I would like you to stand in for me at the Valentino Memorial Service. And I was like, oh, great. That's kind of, as a Tyler, isn't that kind of like, you know, selling tickets to Funny Girl and having Lady Kazan, you know, go on? I mean, people are expecting to see you. And he said, no, Michael, it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about Valentino. That's right. So I said, you know, you're right, absolutely. And it's funny because it was about a year ago that I actually wandered in here. I wasn't working at the cemetery at the time. And I was here to see my friend Jimmy Mack, wonderful historian and actor and writer, speak about Valentino the dancer, I believe. That's what his speech was last year. And I didn't know really anything about the cemetery. I was a fan of Valentino, I was a fan of Hollywood history, but I was blown away by this. This is truly amazing. I mean, there's not a lot of presidents even who get this kind of yearly tribute. And this outpouring of love and affection for this man who's been gone now for 78 years but left such a deep impression. And it blows me away because there are so many stars that don't still get this kind of outpouring. There was something very special about this man, and extraordinary. And he was taken away way too soon. You know, he was at the height of his fame. His career was peaking in 1926. And it was so ironic to think about if he had lived at the dawn of sound, you know, where he might be. And it was tragic, but in a way, it cements him forever in our hearts. You know, this young man. And it's funny, you know, too, when I've been giving tours along with Carrie Bible, who's speaking today, the Lady in Black, who I just absolutely adore. And whenever we get to Valentino's crypt, which is such a nondescript, simple crypt, compared to, say, like Douglas Fairbanks next door, who was a peer of his, a good friend of his, and that seems like a more fitting tribute. You know, this was supposed to be a temporary crypt, and whoever was in charge, I think it was probably Paramount, never made good on their memorial, what they were supposed to do for this man, but here he is in a small crypt. And I think it's just extraordinary. I really do. I think it's extraordinary that he was such a simple, decent guy put in extraordinary circumstances, and that we still remember him today. And I think it's important to remember. I was thinking last night about what am I going to say? And I prepared a couple of speeches, and then I finally trashed everything, and I thought, you know, what I really think that Valentino would want the cemetery maybe to say would be that there are a lot of other people here that deserve to be remembered just as much. And that he was just one person. But he was, in my eyes, in my opinion, an extraordinary person as well. And I'm so proud that we're here to memorialize him. And I can't wait to hear all the speakers. We have some wonderful people here. We have somebody that I just met, that I've been wanting to meet for a long time, Tracy Terhune, who has a wonderful book out that just came out, Valentino Forever, the History of the Valentino Memorial Service. So see, this is part of history. This is amazing. We also have Nell Lloyd, who's our celebrity biographer, who I just adore. And she's going to be doing a forever tribute to Valentino. We're going to be showing that. And Carrie Bible, the Lady in Black, the current Lady in Black, will be speaking. And she has a very interesting speech in store about the shock of Valentino's death and the way it affected the world. Then up next is some music. We have Regina Whitcomb, and Ian Whitcomb's here. He made it last night. I'm so excited. And they're going to be with Bob Mitchell accompanying them, our organist, and our very special guest. They're going to be singing, there's a new star in heaven tonight, maybe it's just a election. Yes, and more. And then the next person speaking will be my friend Jimmy Bagley, who will be talking about Valentino, the international star. And then we have a forever tribute in honor of Bob Mitchell, our organist, which we're very excited about singing. Is this a little too loud?
No.
It's okay, okay. And then Tracy will lead us in a closing prayer. So enjoy yourself, sit back, listen, learn, and remember about Valentino, a very special person. Thank you. Forgottenness and Simone Levin. Would you please stand? These two beautiful people are in pre-production right now for a film, an independent film on the life of Valentino. And Michael will be playing Valentino, and Simone will be playing Alla Azimova. So I'm very excited. I want to introduce
By coming here today, we're continuing a tradition that's time-honored in Hollywood. This is the 77th time this memorial has been held, which was started 1 year on the first anniversary of his death. But ironically, not the first time, the first memorial was not held in this mausoleum. It was held in the chapel on May 30th. So that was where the first Valentino Memorial was held in 1927. Our earliest recording in histories of what we can know went on in the history of the Valentino early days was from Roger Peterson. Roger Peterson was a custodian in this mausoleum. In those days, they actually hired a man to stand here, or not here, but to stay in the mausoleum and escort people, various functions, and just maintain order. And it was very, very elegant in here in those days. And he was here from 1929 to 1940. And what he witnessed was really the birth of the Valentino cult on his day-to-day experiences. And he wrote a book about Valentino, which is really one of the hardest books on Valentino to find. It is called Valentino the Unforgotten. In the first 2 years, when he was buried here in 1926 to 1928, they estimated 100,000 people had come down this corridor to see real Valentino. So definitely he was Valentino the Unforgotten. One of the things I'm going to read that is in my book, that I quoted Roger Peterson's book, that it sort of tells you, he had more questions than answers, but it'll tell you sort of what things were in the early 30s. And he wrote, this is Roger Peterson, 9 out of every 10 visitors to the mausoleum stop at Valentino's crypt. Those who are familiar with its location find their way to the spot unattended. Many of them come back repeatedly. Some appear regularly the same day of the month or week or the same hour. Most are solemn and reverent. Some give way to tears each time. Many come once and are never seen again. There must be a reason for these things. I cannot believe that things just happen. There is something deeper and more vital in this interest in Rudolph Valentino than the mere memory of his short and brilliant career. Thousands who are drawn to his tomb are moved by more than the memory of his shadow on the screens of the world. If not, why is he singled out for adulation and almost worship, while other greater actors and greater men are forgotten? Why is his resting place visited every day of the year by this continuous procession of men and women from near and far? Why do they stand with moist eyes and bowed heads before his crypt? Why do they break into sobs? Why do they kneel in prayer? Why do I receive letters from every corner of the earth from people who want descriptions of his tomb? Why the constant floral offerings? There must be something deeper than the idle curiosity or mere hero worship. So that was really the kickoff of the events here. And by this time, the services had settled down to recognizing August 23rd, the date of his passing, and which is 12:10. We start at that time today. Obviously, he was in the East Coast of New York, but we recognize that time here without the time change. But that is remaining constant. The other instance in the legend is the legend of the Lady in Black, which plays a big part, of course, in the Valentino Memorial history. And one of the most predominant is Dietrich Flumet. Dietrich claimed to be here the day the Valentino was entombed. They had allowed people outside behind ropes to watch the procession. And Dietrich was here, and she saw Pola Negri. Pola Negri was claimed to be Valentino's fiancée, which obviously historians have found that it's not true, but she played it up the hill. She was a film star in her own right, and she was allowed in along with the family for the interment. And then as she reached out, of course, all the cameras were out there, and she collapsed on the front steps, screaming that the world did not know her grief. She married 8 months later. So, Dietrich LeMay also, Dietrich witnessed that and noted that. But she also was the founder of the original Valentino Memorial Guild. And she would come in and she had cards that she would distribute to her members, and everything was done through correspondence, letter writing. And she wrote to them before the memorial in advance, meet me at the bronze doors, hold up your membership card, and join me in the march to the crypt. So what a sight that must have been to see her leading her following. In 1951, Dietrich fainted over back in the alcove. In those days, there was no service out here. It was in the alcove where Valentino was buried. And a lot of negative publicity generated from that. The Valentino family stepped forward and got a little upset. And they felt that fainting spells, black veils, limousines and chauffeurs, chic costumes, off-key songs, incense burnings are certainly out of place at the tomb. The family said that they were not able to come and pay their respects because they would have been involved in the degrading carnivals that had taken place here. So like I say, until that time there was no structured service, but there was a lot of negative publicity. So the cemetery owner, Jim Roth, decided he better step up and take things in the hand. So he hired Bud Testa, who was a publicity man, and ran this event in a structured way, which we still do today, which is here in the main corridor with invited guest speakers in the program. And that still stands today. But Testa was in charge of this for almost 50 years. But you're also, I look out and see everyone, you're in good company. You think, well, who all in all those years have been here? Well, a lot of people whose names we don't know, but some of the famous people who came here and actually sat here or went and visited the crypt one time or another include Jean Harlow, James Dean, Lou Ayres, Rudy Vallon, Rod Taylor, Eddie Murphy, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Joey Bishop, Gloria Stewart, Mary McLaren, and Mary Philbin. And even Michael Jackson would come after hours when this mausoleum used to be locked at 4:30 and they'd have them unlocked, and he would do dance steps in front of the Valentino Mausoleum. I don't know why, but he did. The late 1960s was sort of the Let It All Hang Out series of time, and we saw the emergence of, in 1969, a mod, Lady in Black. Her attire consisted of go-go boots up to the knee, miniskirt, a black see-through blouse, and of course, the heavy black veil. Esther Lita was another colorful character who was a lady in black, and claimed that her mother was the original Lady in Black. In fact, her mother was originally buried at Forest Lawn, and in 1989 she had her removed, and she's on the opposite side of the lake, and she's still there. Her mother was not a Lady in Black, but Esther Lita would not take no for an answer on that. She would come in, Esther Lita was very eccentric, she'd come in and spot someone like Stella and say, "Get out, you're not a friend of Rudy's," which we know is not true. But of course they were not, but she had no authority, of course. But this was how she did. One year she had black stars with Rudo Valentino's name in glitter, lined all the way down the corridor with roses across them. A black electrical tape, taping roses to the crypt. So you can see it's been a colorful history here. Things are more subdued at the Valentino Memorial of today. Time is removed those responsible for the carnivals. That I'd like to close with reading the closing of my book. In 1927, at the conclusion of the first year's memorial, the press openly doubted that there would be any extended interest on the part of the public past the initial first anniversary. Time has proven them very wrong. The Valentino Memorial Service has evolved from the early stages of deep mourning to today's respectful memorial that is held as a celebration of his life. I would like to think that Rudo Valentino would be pleased by the continuing outpouring of affection, past and present, of the many people whose names and deeds fill these pages, whether as individuals or as members of the Valentino Guild. Their efforts throughout the decades was to keep the flame of remembrance lit for Rudolph Valentino. We here today are living proof of how well they have succeeded. Thank you.
and so many new ones too. And that makes me so happy. This is a very unique event. This is a very unique cemetery, and a very unique man who we're honoring. From what I've heard, and I may be wrong, but I don't think so. I try not to be, but sometimes I am. I've heard that this is the longest running, ongoing event in the city of Hollywood. Even the Academy Awards are younger than the Memorial Service for Rudolph Valentino. I think that's something that we can be proud of. We here today are preserving an event and a memorialization that is truly unique in the annals of not only film history, but in memorial services at all. This is a tremendous outpouring. And this was a very special man who, you know, we hear, you know, we've heard earlier and we'll hear later about how he may have said, too much for me. This is too much for me. I think we can all agree that no, it's not too much. And I'm looking forward to more memorial services and more events like this, because this is truly something that forever thrives on memory, and memory forever. That's why we are forever. But this is something that I think we need to do, and we need to do it more often and for more stars. But we need to do this particularly for Rudolph Valentino, because he was taken from us way too early. And God only knows the achievements, the accomplishments that could have gone further for him in his lifetime. The reason that I am here, well, I'm actually here twice. You're going to have to hear me again. But this time, I have the happy privilege of presenting and premiering the 2004 tribute for Rudolph Valentino in a format that Rudolph Valentino never heard of, DVD. Every year I try to come up with a different angle. And since this is my fourth video that I've done for him, you know, it becomes a challenge initially to come up with something that you'll enjoy and something that will live on the website. I hope you all know about our company website, which is located at forevernetwork.com. We preserve everything that we do onto our website, and you are not only free to go and watch and watch and watch, but also do remember that we have a message function in each archive on our website. You can press messages and actually leave a message for Rudolph Valentino that's going to be preserved on the website as a permanent part of his legacy, a permanent part of his archive. I think that would be something so special for you to do tonight after the screening this evening. So leave a message for him, for everyone, to let them know that you were here today, that you enjoyed it, and that you remember Valentino, and why you remember him. That's something I think that is very special. It's something that you can do to participate hands-on in the memorial service, ongoing. This year, we present the dance, and I surely hope you'll enjoy it. You'll be hearing more from me later. On to the DVD.
Looking back on the memory of the dance we shared beneath the stars above. For a moment, all the world was right. How could I have known that you'd ever say goodbye? And now I'm glad I didn't know the way it all would end, the way it all would go. Our lives are better left to chance. I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance. holding you. I held everything for a moment. Wasn't I the king? But if I'd only known how the king would fall, hey, who's to say? You know I might have changed it all. And now I'm glad I didn't know the way it all would end, the way it all would go. Our lives are better left to chance. I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance. It's my life, it's better left to chance. I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance.
The next person, can you hear me?
No.
No. Jay? Have a little sound? Okay, testing?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, the next person I'd like to introduce is a personal friend of mine, the lady in black, Carrie Bud.
Good afternoon, and welcome again to the Valentino Memorial Service. I wear several hats at this cemetery. In addition to being the Lady in Black, I'm also, along with Michael Roman, the in-house historical tour guide. And about a few months ago, I was giving a tour to a group of young high school girls. They were about 16 years old or so. And I was talking to them about the life of Valentino and about his death and the impact that had around the world. And halfway through my speech, I realized I was talking to a sea of blank faces. These girls had never seen a Valentino film or read anything about Valentino, and I was just sort of talking to people who didn't know what I was talking about. So I stopped myself in mid-speech, and I looked at them and I said, okay, girls, who is your favorite movie star right now today? And they all looked at each other and simultaneously shouted, Brad Pitt! And I said, okay, understandable. So, how do you think this would make you feel if you went to bed tonight and you woke up tomorrow morning and you picked up the Los Angeles Times or turned on CNN and Brad Pitt was dead? And there was complete silence at that moment. And then one of the girls, her lips started quivering a bit slightly, and she just goes, oh my gosh, that would just be horrible and awful. And I said, well, there you go. That's exactly how girls just like you felt in 1926 when Valentino died. And at that moment, I knew that they understood what I was talking about. Now, I'm not comparing Valentino in any way to him, because as we know, there will never be another star with the kind of magic and romantic quality that Valentino had. But as I was saying, comparing him to a modern-day film star was at least a way for these girls to relate to what I was talking about. I'm certainly not the first lady in black to do this, however. Dietrich Flemate, who Tracy mentioned, she was the longest-running and most celebrated of the women in black. She did a very similar comparison in 1977, shortly after the death of another major icon, and that would be Elvis. She basically reminded people that the outpouring of grief and emotion over the death of Elvis was again very similar to how people felt in 1926 when Valentino died. And it's hard for us to imagine in the era of modern communication how devastating the death of Valentino was to people. Because during Valentino's day, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have television, they didn't have Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood, and they didn't have the kind of direct access to film stars that maybe we have today. So I think the nature of his fame was far more intense and far more concentrated than any star today could imagine having. And to the public, this man was more than just a man. He was more than just a movie star. Many people saw him as some sort of a god or a hero. And again, it goes beyond just being a star. It goes into the territory of being a legend and being an icon. It seemed very inconceivable to the public that a man so healthy and so vital could already be gone at the age of 31. Just to give you an idea about the impact and the initial shock that happened when Valentino died, headlines blared in this size around the entire world about Valentino's death. In New York, 30,000 mourners showed up on the very first day to try to see his body in Carmel's funeral home. Then it started raining and a riot broke out. The police were called in, people were injured, and it was quite an incredible scene. In Los Angeles, the movie studios briefly shut down in honor of Valentino. And as unbelievable as this may sound, there were at least 2 reported suicides that were spurred on by grief over Valentino's death. There was one woman who shot herself while clutching a sheaf of Valentino photos, and another woman in London who took poison and left a suicide note surrounded by Valentino's photos. And the note read, "With his death, my last bit of courage has flown." Hard to believe, I know, but all of this is actually true. His body was then transported from New York here to Los Angeles for burial, and it was almost akin to a presidential procession across the country. The train made stops in Pennsylvania and Illinois, in Yuma, Arizona, and across the Midwest. People lined up at the train stations and alongside the tracks to pay tribute to Valentino. The role of the Lady in Black has always been an integral part of the Valentino legend. And there have been many women since 1926 all the way up until today who have shown up here to keep his memory alive. So at this time, I would like to ask for a moment of silence to honor not only all of the women in black, but all of the women in general, either famous or not famous, who have come to celebrate Valentino's life and legacy. And also, if you've never seen a Valentino film before, or even if you have, I would like to very strongly encourage you to attend the screening of The Son of the Sheep tonight here in the cemetery. I believe it starts at 8 or 8:30. Just because we can stand here and talk about him and show memorials to him, and that's truly great. But when you see him on screen, and you see his face, and you see his talent, to me, that really says it all. Thank you so much for coming on.
Just wonderful, Carrie. I never tire of listening to her. She's just amazing. So pretty. The next we have Marlene and Regina Whitcomb, and they will be singing "There's a New Star in Heaven Tonight," the song that was inspired by Valentino. And Bob Mitchell will be accompanying them on the organ.
Actually, my wife is going to join me. I'm a bit croaky because I'm sure Mr. Valentino would approve that I've just come from an audition and I'm going on to do a radio show. So, but here I'm going to sing you one of the many songs that came out to not exactly exploit, but talk about Mr. Valentino's death. Among these songs was this one called "There's a New Star in Heaven Tonight," written in that great place where all the hits came from in those days, Tin Pan Alley, New York, published by Jack Mills, whose company specialized in topical songs. They also had a smash hit with Brian, William James Brown, "Believed in Heaven," that's why he's in heaven tonight. And then the Lindbergh songs they published too. So they were on to topical events. But I think this song is actually moving. It's a commercial product, but it's got it moves you as well, and I think that's why it's sold. So I'm going to sing this, and then my wife will join me, and Bob is in the key of, the people's key of G. There's a new star in heaven tonight, who will never fade from our sight. There's a new star at home in that far sparkling dome, shining down on his dear ones tonight. There's a voice singing in the kindly light, with a smile that has made the world bright. Valentino, goodbye, but way up in the sky, there's a new star in heaven tonight. My dear wife will join me and Regina. We're going to sing a song that predates even Valentino. I think he was at this time, this song was published in 1919. He was possibly still a tango dancer. And this was a big hit, and I think it fits Valentino, it fits the world, it fits the West. It's a very philosophical song, an elegiac song called Let the Rest of the World Go By. Is this trouble and strife we find in this life really worthwhile after all?
I've been wishing today we could just run away, out where the west winds call.
With someone like you, a passer and true, I'd like to leave it all behind. I know I'd find some place that's home to God.
Our next speaker, I've known for about 19 years. He's actually my reason for being here. He's a gifted actor who's appeared with Faye Dunaway in her directorial debut, The Yellow Bird. He's a writer with over 60 published articles on the Golden Age of Hollywood. And he's a historian that I get all my information from for our tours. So without further ado, please welcome my good friend, Jimmy Mack.
I'm so happy to be here. This is like Christmas for me. I think I came to my first one in 1977, and it's just fantastic. And it's so good to see so many familiar faces, and I must say, to hear Bob Mitchell. So many other wonderful people, so many nice smiling faces that I've seen for a long time. But before I get started on what I'm very honored and privileged to do, which is Valentino International Film Superstar, there are two books I want to talk about. One you can get today at a very special price, and you should, because it is excellent. It's all about the Valentino Memorial, called Valentino Forever, Tracy to Hearn. It is magnificent. Please do yourself a favor and buy it. It's a great, great book. We also have another book coming out, I believe in October or November, and I wrote it down because I'm terrible with titles. It's called The Valentino Mystique, The Death and Afterlife of the Silent Film Idol. And it's written by my friend, Mr. Alan Allenberger. Alan, will you stand up? Really great books, and we're excited about this book. Well, enough about my friends and these wonderful people. Let's get on to Valentino International Film Superstar. And that's what Valentino was. They had not coined the word superstar in the 20s, but if they had, Valentino would have won it, because there was no other international film box office star quite like Valentino throughout the world. I think we tend to think about Hollywood and maybe the United States when we talk about film. But Valentino's impact was amazing throughout the world. He was huge in other countries. When he first really became a big star, which would have been with the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, that tango entered our culture. People around the world, and it had been done in South America probably, I think, for 20 years. Your son would dance here so beautifully last year. But it was considered a very scandalous dance, and I think it really helped his image when we said Tracy. And it just became part of the world's culture that. Of course, when the Chic came out, just as we heard this great song, that really did it. Chic became something that was associated with a beautiful male star. It was like you were a Chic or you were a Sheba, and it was just absolutely huge. Actually, I just found this out doing research. In the Forbidden City, Puyi, the last emperor, loved films. His favorite star was Harold Lloyd, but he used to play a lot of Valentino films as well, and he particularly loved The Chic, which I thought was really cool. So he was being played in the Forbidden City. Valentino was also a very huge idol in Japan. Japanese have always been big American film fans. Isn't it odd to think that in China and in Japan that Valentino was so big, and people even then were dressing up in costume parties like Valentino. Just the word Valentino was so famous. In South America, he was huge. I'm sure they must have really loved the tango scenes, because that's where the tango scenes came from, wasn't it? India, the Middle East, and Europe. And actually, when he died, he received throughout the world, sometimes headlines, half a newspaper, the whole front page, every country, every major city. As Carrie, our lady in black, pointed out, she was talking about there were a couple of suicides. That lady's name is Peggy Scott. Thank you for telling me that, Helen. And she's the lady who killed herself in England. England, France, Germany were especially keen on Valentino. Also, people had vigils and cried openly underneath his posters in those countries. He was very, very big throughout Europe. In Italy, he was known more in the big cities, but he said himself when he went over there, I looked just like another wop. Forgive me, I know that's not politically correct, but that's what he said. He said that no one recognized him or knew him in his own home, but I think maybe he was being a little bit humble. I'm sure he was recognized wherever he went, and especially with the beautiful Natasha by his side. But it's just interesting to think that in Italy, they said he wasn't quite as big a star as some of the other places. But you know, that is one of the reasons we're here. And I know that we've already talked to a German television individual tonight being interviewed, and I've done BBC and Mexico and Japan, all sorts of things, because people all around the world love film. And Valentino is still a big star. And if you don't think so, because I do see a few new faces out here, along with all these great, I won't say older in age, but older ones that I've known, come tonight and watch Son of the Sheep, and watch Rudolph Valentino, who still is, one of the greatest international film stars of all time. You'll be able to experience his magic, his artistry. I want to close, because it's kind of hot. I don't know, I hate myself. I sweat even when it's like 60 degrees, with a quote I found this morning from the New York Times, and it was given by Miss Gloria Swanson, who, by the way, did a film called Beyond the Rocks with Rudolph Valentino that, thank God, they have found, they are restoring, and I pray Hollywood forever gets it next year. That was my grandmother's favorite film along with the wind. And I've heard about this film all my life. The film is called Beyond the Rocks, so I hope we all can see it. But I would like to close with a quote from the New York Times from Gloria Swanson. And this is what La Swanson, the diva herself, said. He was a real leader in his profession, and his loss will be keenly felt. May the thoughts and prayers of the millions who loved Rudy help him on his journey to the unknown. As a personal friend and admirer, my humble prayers follow him. So do I, and I know so do a lot of people here. And long live the beautiful legacy and artistry of Rudolph Valentino, international film star. Thank you.
Think about silent film. Just the words silent film. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a film truly silent. Think about it. Silent film, of course, they didn't have the technology to match sound synchronized to the visual image. However, all along, from the earliest dawn, actually as far back as 1895, musical accompaniment was something that was integral to the success of film. So silent film is actually quite a misnomer, if you really think about it that way. In the early days of film, we had bands who would sit in the front of the theater, a simple pianist, a simple organist. But today, we here today have a man playing for us who truly is not a simple organist. His name is Bob Mitchell. Not only his contributions to this event every year, because he's here now
I bought the corner of Sunset and Beaudry in Los Angeles, just about a block east of Figueroa, almost downtown. Of course, Sunset Boulevard is a famous street because that's the main artery in Hollywood. I wasn't quite east enough to be in Hollywood, but at least that's a distinguishing name. My legal name was Robert, but when my father's name was Robert, and I was distinguished by being called Bob, but when they caught me doing something I shouldn't have been doing, then I was called Robert. So it makes me cringe when anybody calls me Robert. There was a poem, I don't know if you ever heard, The Boy Stood on the Burning Deck. It was a story about, they told him to keep his watch, and he was stationed on a ship, and the ship was bombed and set on fire, and rather than to break his order, he burned to death, and that was considered heroic. I don't like blondes, I like brunettes. My mother's brunette. So I remember going to school, maybe second grade, Mrs. Woods. And so I said, I don't like blondes, I like brunettes. Well, Mrs. Wood is a blonde. Well, I like brunettes. I wasn't too tactful. I like the sound of the theater pipe organ, the way it used to be with the silent movies, and it's still perpetuated by the theater organ societies all over the country. And of course the piano, such a marvelous instrument where just the touch of the finger determines the volume of the tone. On an organ, it's just like a doorbell. It doesn't matter if you hit it with a sledgehammer or just touch it, you get the same result. But on a piano, it's depending how hard you hit it, it gets that much louder, and you can, by having control over each finger, you can bring out any particular tone you want. So they had an aptitude test, and it came out that I should be an attorney or a physician. And that was what my parents wanted, and that was the way it was. And I went to school, and I got a degree, Bachelor of Music Education. And so then we had to take aptitude tests. Everybody that got out to see, you know, going into business, most of them were going into some line. And so I got the report that I should have been a writer-journalist. It says it is very unusual for anyone with as little aptitude for music as you to make a living, but it says it has been done, so you need not be unduly upset.
Wonderful. Wow. Nope. Hello?
Now you are.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you. And now to conclude the 78th annual Memorial Tribute to Rudolph Valentino, Tracy Turgeon will be doing the closing prayer.
Another tradition, in addition to actually being here, is the conclusion of the Valentino Memorial over a good portion of the years. As we did last year, was reading from the Bible the 23rd Psalm. And so, in continuing with tradition, I'd like to do that again and read that passage. And if anyone here would care to join in, you all know it, feel free to recite it with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thank you.
On behalf of Hollywood Forever and Tyler Cassidy, I want to thank everybody for attending, and I want to also remind you that in your program there's an insert that has the film information about the Son of the Sheep being shown here tonight. Thank you for attending.